The tragedy happened in 1988, but so much of this story has been going on since then. Not just investigations, but a story of two people who've carried this. How did a bomb get onto Flight 103? We have a right to know.
Jim's a very interesting protagonist. He's quite heroic in this story, but he starts off as a middle-aged general practitioner in the Midlands who is forced to take his life in the direction he does.
I'm afraid there are no survivors.
Are you completely sure? This is a man who had a basic trust in institutions. He wasn't a natural activist.
This is an incredibly difficult time.
I just want answers, Minister.
As a younger man, he was in the army, so he's very much a sort of establishment figure, really.
So I'm not here to talk politics, I'm here to talk truth and justice.
But Swire, of course, begins to become anti-establishment and loses faith in law enforcement and in the legal process.
He actually wanted to expose the corruption and censorship of the system.
I think it's one of those classic stories of the mouse that roared and stood up to the government and to the establishment.
Your government is not taking responsibility. You are evading the truth. To realise how far this man had travelled into the unknown. 2 Libyans were accused, Gaddafi was refusing to hand them over, and nothing seemed to be working. Jim was not under any illusions about how dangerous Gaddafi was.
Jim met with Gaddafi on a number of occasions, went out to Libya at that time. The courage of the man is unbelievable.
Pan 103, the truth must be known. One of the things that's so extraordinary about the character of Jim Swire, he's very alive to facts, to evidence, to doubt. It takes, I think, quite a lot of courage to keep doubt alive. And I think what he was carrying through all of this, not only are these twists and turns, but there were people close to him that were paying a price for it.
However compelling Jim's story is to try to get the answers for his daughter's death, he didn't do that in a vacuum. He had a wife, and Jane was very much affected by Jim's actions.
I want you to promise me something, that you accept the verdict, whatever it is, and we get you back.
I promise.
So that sort of becomes her campaign in a way, to tell Jim the hard truths, that if he doesn't come back to them emotionally, there'll be no family maybe left.
I want to be closer to my children, to my grandchildren.
I'm not leaving this house.
I want to be around life, not death, every single minute of the day.
There's a scene where Jane talks about these nightmares she's been having. That was part of where her grief went, into desperately needing to know what happened in those final few moments before Flora did die.
An expert told me that Flora might have been conscious for as much as 15 seconds. 15 seconds knowing she was falling to certain death.
As an actor, you sort of bring in your own experiences of loss, but that scene was just incredibly emotional to do, because this is what Jane really lived day in, day out.
Not everybody processes their grief in the same way, even if the grief is for the same person, within the same family.
She understands him, the form that his grief took, this need to get to the truth. She understands that Jim will never give up the fight, and she loves him for all of that.
All these years.
It's always for her.
From the Sky documentary, they're talking about how Jim dealt with Flora's death, and then they asked her, and she said, I've just dealt with it one day at a time. And in that one moment, there's such a story there, and there's such dignity and grace and humanity and vulnerability and huge strength, and she's just an extraordinary woman.
They've struck me as such impressive, admirable, likeable people. It really does run quite deep when you're representing them. The writers have done an extraordinary job of trying to represent several decades in a few hours, and the complexities and the nuances of these two people in the relationship they had.